There's a lot that goes into SEO that is marketing. And what I mean by that is there are things we could help you show up on Google, but if we don't communicate why you're different and what your process is and what is the sales process, then is it going to actually create the result of a new customer?
Hello, welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building six-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. And this week, Jack Jostes from Ramblin joins us back on the show, and we're going to go deep into SEO. What is SEO? Is it worth it? What does it do to my website in order to get higher rankings so people can find me better? And what are some of the best practices in SEO so you're not spending a lot of money that doesn't do anything for you? So guys, if those are the kind of questions that roll through your head, keep on listening. Hey, Jack, welcome back here to the show. I can't wait to unpack SEO with you today. Last week, we talked about the top 3 strategies for crushing marketing in 2024. And you mentioned that SEO and reviews are very important. And then re-engaging those clients that might not have said yes yet. And then also Facebook and Instagram. So today, I would like to go much deeper with you into what is SEO? From like a bigger 35,000 foot view. And then how the heck do I know if I'm doing it right? What am I supposed to be doing? Who do I hire? Like there's just so many what ifs that I don't understand this. So can you take us through that?
Yes, Joshua, thanks for having me back. And SEO is very powerful. I believe it is the top driver for new customers for landscape and outdoor living companies, primarily because what a qualified source of traffic. When somebody's searching for what you do, yes, you want to be found by that. So essentially, search engine optimization, SEO, is doing the work that helps you show up on a search engine. And at this time, Google is still the dominant search engine. And we're going to focus most of our conversation around Google. I've been working in SEO for over 15 years, and I have seen a lot of it change. I have seen a lot of it not change. So we can get into some of the fundamentals today. And I learned it in part from somebody whose company I eventually acquired. And the way I got into it, my main skill is writing. And I was doing writing for company websites. And then I met someone who did local SEO, and I started hiring him, and he did more of the technical part, and I did the copywriting and client management part. And over the years, I learned more and more and more. And at this time, we've optimized literally over 400 websites. So there's pretty much 2 components of SEO. There's on-page SEO, which is the work that we're going to do on the pages of your website. So your actual website content is on-page SEO. And then there's off-page SEO. And off-page SEO is going to be the things that are not on your website, but they impact where you show up on Google. And that's going to be things like the reviews on your Google business profile, or the recency of the reviews on your Google business profile, or how many other websites link to your website. So that's definitely off your website. Things that are happening externally on other people's websites influence what happens on yours.
Got it. So, when it comes to SEO, I think of, I've been in business now almost 3 decades, and I've had people sling that at me. And sometimes it's like, yeah, for $2,000, I can, optimize your website. Next guy's like, it's going to be 30,000 to optimize your website. And I don't know whether I'm just being bamboozled by somebody or whether there's different levels to this, because I don't know this stuff. I'm not a marketer. That's what you do. So I know a lot of listeners are probably thinking like, I want to do the right thing. SEO is an evergreen investment into your business, right? So if you do like Facebook ads or these kinds of things, you're only getting value when you're paying. But with SEO, you invest in this website getting a higher ranking because you've given it what Google wants to see. So I'd love for you to get in there and give us a couple of simple, examples or strategies in order to understand that part.
Yeah, and the feeling of being bamboozled I can relate to because I was once bamboozled. In fact, the way that I first learned local SEO was I paid to join a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme. Now, not all multi-level marketing businesses are pyramid schemes, but some of them are. And so I paid to join. I had to pay $750. This was 2008. And I joined this product. It was called Local Ad Link. And what it said it did was help you show up on the search results.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, I'm going to help everyone show up on the internet. How wonderful. And I didn't know much about it. This was my first experience. And my clients didn't show up online. I didn't get paid. And then that company, my regional development manager or whatever their joker title was, they stopped answering my calls. So that was how I got into. I was bamboozled, and the other $750 I spent was to join a networking organization. So I joined this networking group, kind of like BNI, and I had a taste of the freedom of working for myself. But more importantly, I was like really curious of like, how does this actually work? How do I actually help people with this? How do I not get bamboozled? And how do I protect people from getting bamboozled? That was truly how I got into this. So that's when I then met the mentor whose company I later acquired. So people who have been bamboozled, you're not alone. I was at one's time. It happened to me. Yeah. So again, back to the two concepts of on-page SEO and off-page SEO, and why might one person charge you $2,000 while another might charge $30,000? To me, there's a lot that goes into SEO that is marketing. And what I mean by that is there are things we could help you show up on Google, but if we don't communicate why you're different and what your process is and what is the sales process, then is it going to actually create the result of a new customer? Because typically, people want quote unquote results. And I say, well, which results do you want? Because there's usually what they really want is to get found online by somebody who becomes a customer.
Correct.
And so the getting found online part, in my opinion, is actually kind of easy once you learn how SEO works. But the getting found online and persuading somebody to become a customer that is a qualified lead for your business is going to involve sales process and marketing and copywriting. And those are more skilled trades, if you will, than just getting some keywords on my website and helping me show up. So I created a concept called the Tree of Good Fortune. And the reason I created that was because I found that the analogy to a garden helped my landscape clients visualize it all. So the Tree of Good Fortune produces apples. The apples are what I call your hell yes customer. And to get there, we grow a limb for each city and a branch for each service. What that means is for on-page SEO that you're going to have a limb for each city and a branch for each service. So let's just pretend that you're in Chicago, Illinois, and you do outdoor living and you do landscape maintenance. Let's just keep it simple. I'm going to need to have a page on my website about outdoor living and a separate page for landscape maintenance. And now if I do Chicago and I also do, I'm going to pick where I'm from, Arlington Heights, I'm going to build out an individual page about Arlington Heights landscape maintenance and Arlington Heights outdoor living. And I'm going to expand that rather largely to all the major suburbs and cities that I service. Because when I do that, I now have that really strong branch that'll show up at the top of the search results. Whereas if I have what most contractors have is a really thin website, meaning they've got like 5 pages, it gets really hard to show up in all the different markets that I'm trying to target with not a lot of pages on my website.
That makes sense. Now, what is Google looking for when it crawls your site and it's looking for, like you're talking about, like a city and the actual feature or whatever you're doing, the service that you're putting out there? Like, what is it ideally looking for? What does the perfect apple, if you will, look like for Google?
Yeah, so I think if we think of it from Google's perspective, it's helpful because what Google wants is when I Google something, whatever shows up on Google, I'm just like, yeah, Google, you nailed it.
Yeah.
I'm going to use you again and again and again for everything because you always answer my questions like instantaneously with the right content. So if Google showed me a website when I Google landscape design Arlington Heights and that company doesn't do it in Arlington Heights, that was a waste of my time and I'm going to lose trust in Google. So essentially what they're looking for is content pages that match whatever the query is, whatever somebody's searching. So a perfect page for a landscape company would be a whole page about that city and the services that you offer. And you might think, wow, a whole page about landscape design Arlington Heights? Yeah, absolutely. And we can show photos. Here are recent photos of landscape design projects in Arlington Heights. So now I've mentioned the word landscape design and Arlington Heights in a heading, and I've got some photos. Here's what homeowners in Arlington Heights have to say. And we've got testimonial, Mrs. Smith from Arlington Heights, Jane Doe from Arlington Heights. So you need to use the geographic keywords on the page. And this is the number one mistake that I see on outdoor living and landscape design websites is a lack of geographic keywords. So they might have a whole page about outdoor living, but outdoor living where in the world? Yeah. You only do outdoor living in a limited geographic area. And because people Google that and Google wants to see that, you've got to use those geographic keywords in some key spots. And I'm going to just tell you what they are. There's the page title tag. So the page title tag is the title of your website. If you're in a browser, you can kind of see it when you're on a web page. Like, so we're using Riverside and it says at the top, Riverside, outer spaces. That's the page title tag. That has to have the geographic keyword and the service keyword. We want to see it in what's called your H1. This is your heading 1 setting on your website, and it should absolutely be in there. We want to see it in the text. My rule of thumb is 3 to 5 times per page. So if I'm wanting to rank for the phrase Arlington Heights, I'm going to find a way to write Arlington Heights 3 to 5 times into that page.
Got it. That's a great piece of information. Now, this sounds like if you service a lot of areas, maybe there's 10 or 12 different cities or towns that you service, that this can be a lot of pages. Now, you obviously don't have all these pages, like when you get up on the website, it's not like they're all right there. Obviously you got to look for them. Do you keep them easy to access, or are these more hidden in the background? Like, so
no,
on your website, you don't see them.
Yeah. So it is a lot of pages, and typically it takes years to build them out. I work with people sometimes for 3 to 5 years before we're done building this. And they may end up with 50 to 100 page websites. But the cool thing is that as long as it's maintained like an apple tree, it's going to bear fruit every season and you don't need to keep paying for it. Yeah. Right. So there's a certain point where it's investment intensive getting started, but then it really pays dividends over time. And the cost. So many business coaches or marketers are curious about the cost per lead. and it's going to be higher in the beginning. Yeah. But over time, it goes way down. Whereas if we're doing Google ads or Facebook advertising or some type of advertising, that cost is going to be high, ongoing. And then once we stop paying, it goes away. So as far as, building it into the website, what I recommend doing is building a service areas page. So in the navigation, typically people have home, about, services, contact. I'm going to nudge in a pricing guide. That's one of the things that you and I have talked about, right? I'm going to nudge in a service areas page, and a drop down from that is going to be all those other areas. So this does a couple of things. One, the site architecture, and that's essentially a way of how is the site built? What's the layout of the menu? The menu passes link juice, if you will, to the other pages. So having something in your menu is going to help those pages rank higher on Google. Whereas if we just hide them or build them in a way that nobody sees them and they're not in the menu, they're going to be less likely to rank on Google. And then also, I think this really serves customers. This isn't just about Google. If a customer's on your website, they want to know, do you work in my area? And going back to Chicagoland is enormous.
Yep.
Like Cook County is one of the largest counties in the country. And it can take you well over an hour and a half to drive from one point in Chicagoland to another. So it's kind of a meaningless word from a marketing standpoint. Chicagoland, well, where? Yeah. And that service areas page is like, oh, cool, I'm in their area, I'm going to contact them.
I love that. Now, I know that you mentioned like people actually typing in search queries and in Google when they're searching for things. How do we find out which different keywords that are using in order to make sure our pages represent that? Like maybe it's like you mentioned, Chicago, or it's Aurora or something like that, more of a city, outdoor living or anything like that. Like, how do we know what they're searching? How can we get a list of that so we can effectively set our pages up?
It's a great question of how do we figure out what keywords are our potential customers searching? Yep. And there are a couple ways of doing this. One is to use Google Suggest. So I'm just going to do it right now while I'm on the interview with you. If you go to google.com and you start typing in, let's just start typing in like the word patio. So Google is suggesting patio furniture, not a fit. None of, right? So when we start to type into Google is trying to anticipate, well, what are you looking for? And a lot of times, if we start typing more, we know that Google is suggesting that because there are many searches for it. So if we go to, if we do a different one like outdoor living, oh, wow, now it's suggesting outdoor living Denver. So when I see a service keyword with a city name in it, ooh, that's good, because not only am I looking for outdoor living ideas, right? I might see Pinterest or some other design site or a magazine, but when I start adding in that geographic modifier, it has the intent of finding a company who does it. So that to me is going to let me know that outdoor living is a good keyword. So then once I click on there, and I scroll down, I can see, and you can't see this right now, but at the bottom are related searches. So it's saying cabinet stores near Denver, kitchen remodelers near Denver, furniture stores, and then it gets into, outdoor kitchens Denver. And so part of it's like clicking on these things and looking at the search phrases and what are the results and are they for businesses like yours? I'm going to give listeners just a gold tip. Outdoor living is absolutely a good keyword. Outdoor living is a good keyword, and so is landscape design. Landscape design, now many people get hung up on what does the word design mean? And they're like, oh, well, I don't do landscape design. I do outdoor living. A lot of times the customer is searching landscape design when they need what you might call hardscaping. I can tell you that hardscaping is a terrible keyword. Everyone listening does hardscaping. No one is Googling that except other contractors.
That's right.
So, like, right. So this is why, I mean, we got to get into like, what does our customer want? What are they searching?
Yep.
Another really powerful free tool is called Google Trends. So if you go to trends.google.com, you can type in search phrases like outdoor living or landscape design or lawn care or lawn maintenance or landscape maintenance, landscaping companies, and you can see a chart that'll show you the comparisons for those keywords, and it can give you a sense of which ones to use.
I love that, dude. Yeah, thank you for that. That is a huge thing. So listeners out there, if you're just sitting here thinking like, oh boy, I got to go check, just pause this or rewind it back, grab that those different links that he just mentioned and go take a look and see where, what you can find on there that'll help you with your business for sure. Now, Jack, I know that when it comes to site speed, could you talk a little bit about site speed and how fast it loads? Because I've been on some sites, they're waiting for it to load, and you're just like, screw this, I'm going to go on to something else. So what should we be looking for in a site speed, and how does Google see that?
Yeah, so site speed is essentially a measure of how fast does your website load. And landscape design and outdoor living companies are at risk of having a slow site speed because they typically have enormous, beautiful photographs.
Yep.
And if you hire a professional photographer and they send you enormous photo files, which they should and you want, because maybe you want to print them or, who knows what you want to do with them. I've seen some people even print them in their office and frame them, and they look so cool. So we want those big photos, but if we don't size them correctly for the web, we can be asking your website is going to take many seconds to load all of those images, and then other code on your website, or if you use HubSpot and Google Analytics, you start adding all these other codes that your website needs to crawl. It's gonna load more slowly. And first and foremost, let's forget about SEO stuff. It's just frustrating for customers if they're on a slow website. And if you live in an area where, maybe cell phone service isn't that great, right? That gets even worse. Or maybe internet speeds aren't great. It also, from a technical standpoint, can impact your ranking on Google, and maybe even more importantly, if you're paying for Google ads or Facebook ads. I deliberately waited 5 seconds there, and that was a little weird. I had a client one time, and they came to me, and I was doing an audit, and that's where I start with all clients. I'm like, hey, I got to get under the hood, look at what you've got. They were spending $6,000 a month between Google ads and Facebook ads. And the ads looked beautiful. The ads were getting a good click-through rate, but as far as converting into a lead, their conversion rate was terrible. Mm-hmm. Their website took 20 seconds to load on mobile.
Wow.
So they were, and I said it to them this way. I'm like, look, you're paying $6,000 a month for people to go to a slow website.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So were the ads the problem? No, the ads were great, but they were funneling to a slow website. So this is where, in the on-page SEO that we were talking about, there is a pretty technical component of website development. And not all websites are created equally. And what's even more frustrating is many times very beautiful looking websites are poorly developed. Yeah. And that means that they could load slowly. They might not have some of the sales components that I would want to see, like calls to actions or forms, things like that. So this is where, it gets a little more complicated, and you really do need a well-developed website.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. Now, is there any tools that you can recommend our listeners go to see if their websites are fast or whether they're really slow? Because to be honest with you, we just found this out about ours, and we were doing okay, but it certainly was not great. And I could not believe when I found out, like, how long have we been doing this? And we didn't know that our website, and we have all these beautiful pictures, and how fast it was. Well, how slow it was going, and how fast it could be going.
Yeah, there is a tool, and there are some advanced ones, some of them that require a software or a membership. You have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't recommend those unless you're a professional marketing company like mine. If you want to just get a baseline of like, how am I doing? If you search on Google page speed, if you even just search that, and again, I mentioned this because they've changed the website. Currently at this time, it's pagespeed.web.dev. Okay. So anyways, if you just Google page speed insights, you can find that and run your site through there, and they have all of the different metrics, and they make it pretty easy. They give you a green, yellow, or red.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, Josh, you don't have to completely rebuild your website. Sometimes there are, oh, wow, I didn't realize that the Smith's outdoor living photo on my gallery was 2 gigabytes. It's this enormous file, and we need to resize that. So there are things that you can do, but also, Joshua, some sites are so old and so poorly built that there's no saving them. And it can be the downside of some of the less expensive website tools like GoDaddy Website Builder or Squarespace or Wix. Some of those sites come at the cost of being slow, and then also not having the full functionality to tune it up. Before you go down that rabbit hole, though, and how much money do you need to spend on SEO and how much SEO do you really need to do? I really believe that it's market dependent. And what I mean by that is if you're in like Philadelphia, it's one of the most competitive markets in the whole country. If you're in Pittsburgh, that's pretty competitive. If you're in a more rural area where there are simply, one, the population is lower, and two, the number of competitors on Google is lower, you'll need to do less marketing, right? Because it's less competitive. So there are 10 spots on the first page of Google at this time, right? So there's the map results, and then there are 10 links. And so if you're in a market where there's only 2 other competitors, you can probably outrank them by doing some pretty basic stuff. But if you're in a market like Denver, Colorado, where there's like 50, so wow, now I'm competing with another 40 businesses that are trying to get into those coveted 10 spots. That's where some of this technical stuff will make or break it.
It makes perfect sense. Now, can you give us any range, as we wrap up here, any range of what SEO might look like on a yearly or an overall cost basis so the listeners kind of get a sense? And I know it's just like you mentioned, some might be very little and some might be a ton, but is there any ranges that you can suggest they should be thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're going to hire like a truly professional company, you're probably going to be spending thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
And that's just what it's going to cost. And if you are in a very competitive market and you're wanting to grow faster, you're going to need to spend more. You might be spending $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month. If you are in a less competitive market and or you're okay with growing slower, then you may spend $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And if you're in a very light competition market, you might be able to get away with doing a one-time project, meaning you might be able to get in one and done and you're out. But it partly depends on how large is your service area and how competitive is that service area.
Yeah, that's
Chicago,
Chicago, not one size fit all kind of thing.
Yeah, Chicago is a good example again because it's fiercely competitive. One of the things that I do with an audit for people to help them figure out their budget is a market analysis. And I'll Google and I'll say, hey, look, the highest rated outdoor living company in Chicago has 127 Google reviews, and they've been in business for 20 years. The next one after that has, and this actually happened, has 70 Google reviews and then 60 Google reviews. You have 8 Google reviews and you've been in business for 2 years. So you are in a fiercely competitive market, and it's going to take longer and more money. And then I might look at a company that's the same revenue size, the same years in business. I'm like, hey, good news. The top competitor in your area has 12 Google reviews and you have 8. Let's get 4 more this week and we're going to crush them. And like, right. So that's why it's relative. I don't mean to not answer the question directly, but rather just to say it depends on your market and what you have.
I think that's an honest answer. That's really what we're looking for, because it really depends on where you are. So guys out there listening here as we wrap up, when it comes to Facebook ads and all the glitter and glare you get with that and Instagram, and you can sit around and show your friends that's my business right there. That's really cool. Be careful how much you're spending there, because as soon as you shut that valve off, your leads then shut off as well. And when you get into SEO and you invest in your business, as Jack is talking about, invest in that website, invest in the SEO, that becomes evergreen. That's money that you're investing in the future. So it might cost you now, but you're going to get leads, apples on that tree for years and years and years to come. And and you're going to have to keep it up. It's not a once and done kind of thing, but we have to make sure Google gets what they want, because your leads are much warmer when they're actually searching directly for keywords versus sitting on that couch watching Netflix, scrolling with Cheeto dust on their fingers, right? And like, they're not going to spend $150,000, $200,000 like that because they're early in their sales, overall process. We got to get them down the line when they're already ready to make a decision. And that's when they're searching on Google for that. And we got to make sure they can find us. So Jack, I appreciate everything you've said today. I'm here. We got to wrap up. So how can people find you if they find this very intriguing and they know they need to get their stuff straight?
Well, again, so I have a book on this. It's called The Tree of Good Fortune, and it'll help you figure out what order to go in, where to do this, and how to differentiate your company, how to do SEO, and you can get a free copy. You just have to pay for shipping. That's at treeofgoodfortune.com. And also, if you'd like to just have a conversation with me and my team, we offer a 15-minute marketing brainstorm at ramblinjackson.com. And the way we start with people, Joshua, is we make a review of your website. We just send you a video of like, hey, this looks good. We noticed you don't have a page for this. And you can just request that right on ramblinjackson.com.
I love that. Thank you, Jack, for everything today. And guys, next week, we're going to be getting into Facebook ads. We talked about SEO today, and we're going to talk about where they make sense, how much you should be spending or not spending doing that, and to get deeper into that subject. Because I'll tell you right now, guys, the leads you get sometimes are good and sometimes are crap. So just because you got leads coming in and you can't close them, what the hell are you spending money on them for? If you're not closing at least 75% or more of them, then something's not right. So stop throwing money at that, because it's a waste. If we can get it dialed in, you're going to have a much better effective sales process throughout this by being able to close those leads and turning them into actual dollars. So guys, thanks again, Jack. And guys, I'll see you next week.